bubble sort. So this sort's pretty straightforward. Here's what you're going to do. We're going to start at the very beginning, and we're going to compare neighboring elements, always like adjacent things in our list. And if they're out of order, we swap them. Otherwise, you leave them alone. And then after that, we move to the next pair. And if they're out of order, we swap them. And so on until we get to the end of the list. And when we get to the end of the list, we might not have a sorted list, so we have to start over again. And if they're out of order, you swap them. Otherwise, you move on and so on. And you keep doing this over and over and over again. So we just keep going through the list, swapping neighboring elements if they're out of order. And as soon as we do a pass where we don't need any more swaps, the list is sorted. Now, what's interesting about this is after every single pass, like the first pass we go through, the largest element will always end up in the last location of our list. If this isn't obvious to you, take your time and make sure that makes sense, because it's pretty interesting. Anyways, let's look at the code. We've got this flagged swapped. This is just going to keep track of if we ever made a swap on a pass. So a flag to check if we swapped any elements in the list. Okay. And now we ask ourselves, well, we have swapped something. In other words, this is the outside loop that's going to keep saying like, traverse the list, make swaps. Traverse the list, make swaps. It's the one saying like, you got to retraverse the list. Because if we swapped something, then we know we need to redo it. If swapped something was false, then we don't need to execute this while loop anymore, and that means we're done. So this loop keeps saying, sure, it's kind of a funny comment, but whatever. And then as soon as we start at the beginning, swap something's going to be false, right? Because we haven't swapped anything yet. So set, well, actually, that's pretty straightforward. Probably don't need a comment. And now we've got an inside loop. So this is going to be the one that actually goes through and traverses the list. So the outside loop keeps saying, well, just traverse the list again. This inside loop is actually traversing the list. Notice that it actually goes to the length of the list -1. The reason for that is we're always comparing neighbors, right? So, like, look at this line right here. If I was ever the last thing in the list and we tried to compare it to the thing after the last thing in the list, that doesn't make any sense, right? So only go to the end of the list -1, so that way when we're comparing the last two, this +1 will actually be the last thing in the list. So this loop, the list, and the swapping take place inside here. Note that it only goes to len -1. And then inside here, this is just the if statement that says, hey, if two neighboring elements are out of order, swap them. So that's what's going on in here. But the if statement is, if two things are out of order, swap them. And then these three lines are actually the swapping. Note that I need an additional variable called temp. Think of it like this. I have a piece of garlic in this hand and this cracker in this hand, and I need to swap them. We can't just say, hey, this hand become a cracker, because then we lose track of what's in here. So this is what we're actually doing. We're saying, like, let's say my mouth is temp. I do this, and then I can put this in here, and then I can say, hey, this, take what temp has. And then we swapped them. So we actually have to do this inside the computer. So that's interesting. So anyways, we've got swapped something here too. If we actually swap something, then guess what? We have to set our flag to reswap something. And we're going to keep doing this over and over and over again until we don't have to swap anything anymore. And then we exit this while loop and we come down to this return statement and we're done. The list will be sorted.